Hey everybody, Joshua Lanford here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome to another episode in this series on how to play modern music styles on traditional classical instruments. No, I'm not gonna play this thing. You see, Nicole has a much higher voice than me, so she's much better suited to playing a higher instrument.
Yay!
So typically, instruments like the flute and violin will play from sheet music, and of course they'll play traditional classical songs. But what do you do in more of a modern situation where a modern band gives you some chord progressions and you just have to figure out something to play based on those chords? Now you could just learn the melody to different popular songs, but usually that's not necessary because the singer's already going to be singing the melody. So I think a much better thing to do, and something that would sound a lot cooler, is to learn some licks and some lines that you can play based on the chord progression that the band is playing. And this will work for any modern situation. It doesn't matter whether you're playing rock, pop, worship, or any other style of music. Most modern styles of music are going to use a very basic chord progression that you can improvise off of. So most styles use a chord progression that has the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6 chords. So in the key of C, those chords would be, the 1 chord would be the C chord, the 4 chord would be the F chord, the 5 chord would be G, and the 6 would be A minor, for example. So, let's do it. I'm going to play some chords and Nicole's going to start improvising based off of those chords. So you could hear, Nicole was really trying, but the notes that she was playing didn't quite go with like a lot of the chords that I was playing. That's why it's important to know exactly what chords are being played and what the chord progression is, so that you'll be playing in the right key and be playing notes that go with every chord. So today we're going to play a 1, 4, 5, and 6 progression in the key of C. It's important to know what the notes are from each chord so that you'll know what notes to play on your instrument. And so the notes in the C chord are C, E, G. And the notes in the G chord are G, B, D. And the notes in the A minor chord are A, C, E. And then the notes in the F chord are F, A, C. So the chord progression is going to sound like this. C, G, A minor, F. So now I'm going to play those 4 chords again, and Nicole's going to play the root note of each chord. Like when I play the C chord, she's going to play the C note on her flute. So let's get started. So it sounds a little bit boring to just play the root note from each chord, especially if you play a melody instrument like the flute. So for this next example, then I'm going to play through those 4 chords, and Nicole's going to play the 3rd of each chord. Like on the C chord, she's going to play the E note. So let's try that out. So that sounded a lot better, and a lot of the time the 3rd of each chord is the most melodic note of the chord, but I think it would also sound good if we try out the fifth of each chord. So now I'm going to play those 4 chords. Nicole's going to play the fifth of each chord. So like when I play the C chord, she's going to play the G note. And let's see how that sounds. So once again, that sounded pretty good, but I do think it almost feels like something is kind of missing when you only play the root or only play the third or only play the fifth of each chord. So one thing I'd like to do is I'd like to incorporate notes from the scale. So these 4 chords that I'm playing are in the key of C, and so we can add notes from the C major scale, even notes that aren't in the actual chords, and use them as transitional notes to transition to the notes of the chord. So the C major scale will sound something like this. Actually, on the flute, it will sound much higher than that. It will sound more like this. So you don't need to be stuck with just playing the 1 or just playing the 3 or just playing the 5 of each chord when each chord comes around. You can play any of those notes, and you can also add other notes from the C major scale and use them as transitional notes. For example, when I'm playing on the C chord, then Nicole could start by playing the E note. Then she could play an F note, which would transition into the G note, which would be played over the G chord. So now I'm going to play those 4 chords, the C, G, A minor, and F again, but this time, instead of just playing the 1 or just playing the 3 or just playing the 5, Nicole's going to select one of those notes to play that she thinks sounds especially good, and she's also going to add in some other notes from the C major scale that will act as transitional notes to transition to the other notes of the other chords. So that was just absolutely beautiful, and you'll notice it sounded very melodic. So one thing you'll notice when we add notes from the scale and we play several notes over each chord, it can sound like a really great melody that could be used for a really awesome sounding song. So we've just proven that you can play a beautiful melody on a flute based off of a chord progression, and you don't need to be looking at sheet music the whole time. You can just improvise and play notes that sound great with every chord. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode on how to play modern music styles on traditional classical instruments. And if you want to see more episodes, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next episode. And welcome to another episode on this... my hood wasn't ready. Oh, it's recording? Yes. Try it again.
You can go.
Be quiet.
Guys, you haven't been quiet for like even 2 minutes. It
You
seems
haven't
like.
been quiet very long at all. And then that would lead into the G chord.
Lord, forget it!
For example, when I'm playing on the C chord, then Nicole could start by playing the E note, which is the... For example, when I'm playing on the C... So we've just proven... that you can... What have we proven?
What have we done?
Oh no.